The drought that began in 1165 was supposed to be temporary. When the rains failed, the farmers worked harder, planting new crops, searching for water. They dug deeper wells and prayed to God for a quick end to the dry spell. Then 1166 arrived, bringing the same merciless sun and another failed harvest. There were rumors of other places suffering too. In Persia, they said, men were eating stones because they had nothing else. In Syria, a farmer had been sentenced to death after selling his daughter to a brothel to buy bread. By 1167, the famine had grown into something beyond imagination. Egypt, the breadbasket of the Muslim world, was now a land of famine and silence. The Nile still refused to rise, and with every passing season, more fields dried, more mouths went hungry, and more hope was lost. This story is brought to you with the help of a platform that brings history to life through immersive experiences. Now, let's get back to the story. The royal palace in Cairo was once the finest in the world, home to one of the largest and most sumptuous courts. But as the years passed, its glory faded. Its gardens withered, and its fountains ran dry. Its halls, once echoing with music and laughter, fell silent. The royal kitchens, once filled with feasts and perfumes, now served simple, meager meals. If anything at all, the Caliphate's finest warriors had left the city in droves. Soldiers deserted their posts and fled across the desert, seeking a better life anywhere else. Those who remained were too old or too young to remember a time when the pantry was full. The Caliph, Al-Mustansir Billah, watched this decline from his throne. He was a frail man, haunted by the ghost of his ancestors. His belly was bloated, his skin pallid, his mind blank. He had ascended to the Caliphate at the height of the Fatimid Empire, and now it was crumbling to dust. Some blamed him for the drought. Others said it was a punishment from God for his decadent ways. No one knew the truth, but as the weeks turned into months, the people grew angrier and hungrier. Outside the palace walls, the crowds became larger, more desperate. Every morning, thousands of emaciated men, women and children would gather around the palace gates, begging for food. Each day, the Caliph had fewer coins to hand out. So each day, the crowd grew more angry, shouting, "Where is our Caliph? Why does he eat while we die?" At first, the cries were sporadic. Then they grew louder, more insistent. Soon, they were a constant din. And still, the Caliphate sheltered in his palace, watching his empire fall apart. He was surrounded by his elite guards, his eunuchs, and his concubines, along with his viziers and advisors, most of whom hadn't seen a full meal in months. They argued about the famine, blaming droughts, bandits, political enemies. But there was no solution. Together, they could only watch the empire drown in misery. One night, a group of rebels crept into the city, aiming to storm the palace. The guards caught them, but as the Caliph learned, their leader was an old friend. He ordered he be set free. That rebel happened to be the emir's. He escaped to Mecca and called for jihad against the tyrannical Caliph. More rebels joined him, many of them soldiers who were owed months of back pay. They weren't fanatics, merely men pushed to the edge by unrelenting hunger. The Caliph fortified the palace, sealing the gates and pulling down the drawbridges. But before he could seal off the entrances, a few rebels slipped inside, carrying weapons made from farm tools. They moved through the palace, killing anyone in their path: eunuch, concubine, vizier, advisor, soldier. Soon, the entire palace was theirs. In the courtyard, the Caliph cowered behind a pillar, hiding next to his son. Both were emaciated, their bodies hollowed out by hunger. Their wives and children had died long ago, leaving them alone in their gilded cage. As the rebels approached, the Caliph clutched his son close, unsure of what to do. The rebels surrounded them. The Caliph held his ground, refusing to kneel or beg for mercy. Instead, he asked them to kill him first, then take his son away. When the emir heard this, he stepped forward. The Caliph struggled to see him through his tears. "Are you my friend?" he croaked. "I sent for you, but you didn't come." "I was waiting for you to come to me," the emir said. his voice heavy with sorrow. Not the other way around. The Caliph's eyes widened in confusion. The Emir continued, "You should have come to me long ago. We would have shared the kingdom together. But the palace, the people," the Caliph stammered. "They need me." "No, they don't," the Emir said, shaking his head sadly. "They abandoned you when you needed them the most. Only I remain loyal." He turned to the Caliph's son. "You will rule alongside me," he said, offering the boy a warm smile. The Caliph hesitated for a moment, torn between fear and relief. But then he nodded, resigning himself to his fate. When the Emir seized power, he faced a daunting challenge. Rebuilding the empire would take years, perhaps decades. But first, he had to save his people from starvation. It was the biggest crisis in Egypt's history, and the Emir knew that if he didn't act fast, the famine could wipe out his entire population. But he also knew he couldn't solve this crisis alone. He needed the help of the kingdom's former leaders, especially the emirs of the provinces, who had been ruling independently from the capital. So he sent out invitations to a conference in Cairo, promising to share power if they attended. To his disappointment, only 3 emirs showed up. Without the others, he couldn't implement his plans. Discouraged but determined, he convened a council anyway, appointing judges to distribute food fairly, organizing communal kitchens and appealing to neighboring kingdoms for aid. But these measures weren't enough. Food prices kept rising, and the death toll kept climbing. As the months passed, the situation worsened. People were fleeing the cities, desperate to find food in the countryside. But the famine had reached far beyond Egypt's borders, affecting entire regions. The Emir realized he needed to look further afield. So he dispatched a fleet of ships to seek aid in India and China. But the journey was long and perilous. Most of the ships never returned. The ones that did brought news that both countries were facing their own hardships and could unspare any grain. Desperate times called for desperate measures. The Emir considered selling slaves, but the kingdom had sold most of theirs already. Then he thought of the Nubian princes. But those rulers had proven untrustworthy in the past. Finally, he decided to hire foreign mercenaries to protect the kingdom from bandits. He envisioned an army that would enforce order, seize grain, and deliver aid to the starving citizens. But as soon as they arrived, the Emir's hopes dimmed. These mercenaries weren't disciplined soldiers. They were just men looking to put food in their stomachs. Soon, they were pillaging villages, seizing what little the peasants had left. Within weeks, Egypt was a battleground. Entire villages were wiped out, crops were trampled, homes burned. Women were violated, children orphaned. Whole communities looked to the cities as they emptied out the countryside. In a matter of months, Egypt was no longer ruled by an emir. It was ruled by hunger. Those who couldn't flee to the deserts or the mountains did something even more desperate. They fled to the Nile barcos, small boats made from animal skins, stretched over wooden frames, were the only means of transport left. So the survivors got on board, hoping to find food from nomads or traders along the river. Many never returned. Those who did often brought news that the South was suffering just as much as the North. Still, some refused to give up. They continued traveling south, hoping to find better lands. Along the way, they endured hunger, thirst, exhaustion, snake bites. Many perished, but a lucky few survived. In the cities, the horrors only grew. People spoke in hushed tones of a butcher in Fustat, caught selling meat from a corpse, of a woman found roasting the body of her own child, of a man who killed his neighbor for a single loaf. Rumors spread like wildfire, growing more gruesome with each retelling. No one knew what to believe, but everyone suspected it was true. Slowly, cannibalism, a word from ancient nightmares, returned to life. People whispered these stories in terror, and then slowly stopped whispering altogether, because it was no longer rare. It was survival. As the fire of hunger spread across Egypt, the souls of its people began to fade away. They were too weak to fight, too hungry to run, too numb to hope. All they could do was survive, somewhere deep within the ruins of an empire. One question echoed through the ages. How long can a civilization built on a river survive without it? I'm the host, Thank you for watching this episode of our series. This series is inspired by a book. If you want to learn more about the great pharaohs, visit our channel.